What's up everybody, welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony, let's jump in. Okay, happy Tuesday everybody. Well, much of the country is on holiday for the traditional Chinese festival of tomb sweeping. Shanghai enters its second week of lockdowns, despite original assurances that the lockdowns would be short-term, with officially recognized daily cases soon to hit 15,000 in Shanghai alone. Many of Shanghai's 25 million plus residents will likely still have a long lockdown ahead of them. The Shanghai lockdown has not been smooth either, and in such a high-profile location, with some of the country's wealthiest and best educated citizens, scrutiny of the measures and the actions of local officials is high. Quote, "The strict curbs have put residents' lives at risk, as several deaths and online pleas for help have stoked anger over the government's poor handling of the situation. Problems have occurred at the new isolation facilities too, including a shortage of medical staff and inadequate food or beds for quarantine residents, including young children and the elderly." And, quote, "Shanghai officials took a looser approach to managing the latest outbreak, but they failed. The chaos that has ensued has been shocking for many, and especially as it has occurred in what is supposed to be the PRC city with the most competent officials." On Saturday, Shanghai's Pudong Center for Disease Control said that it was investigating a leaked recording of a call between an infectious disease expert working with the CDC and a local resident, where the expert is heard saying that she has raised concerns over the current quarantine and testing rules, and that the virus has become a political issue rather than a public health one. Medical workers deployed to Shanghai have surged in recent days, passing 40,000 yesterday. As I said before, we have a holiday here in China, Tomb Sweeping Festival, but businesses will not be expecting many to travel. Few people want to risk crossing a provincial border and being stuck in quarantine. China's Transport Ministry expects a 20% drop in road traffic and a 55% fall in flights during the 3-day holiday, the final day of which is today. International enterprises are feeling it too. Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory remains closed. The port of Shanghai handles 17% of China's total ocean shipping volume. It's a gateway for the country's economy. In recent days, there has been concern that the port is heavily congested, which could disrupt supply chains. The port has claimed, however, that all port units are operating 24 hours a day and that disruptions are manageable. Perhaps, but we will still keep an eye on this very important entry and exit port. Now, speaking of the economic cost, it was the fear of paying such a steep price that made Hong Kong's government eventually decide to avoid a citywide lockdown and mass testing. We remember that Shanghai also tried to avoid this, instead trying to achieve a more balanced approach. But ultimately, as a mainland city, it had to eventually play by Beijing's playbook, and that meant a lockdown. By the way, speaking of Hong Kong, yesterday we said that we would be discussing the announcement by Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam that she would not be seeking a second term in the position with the upcoming elections due to family reasons. I said we were going to discuss that today, but looking at the information that's come out, I don't think there's that much to actually discuss. If there is more to the story over the next few days, we will talk about the decision later in the week. Like I said above, it's not just Shanghai that is dealing with an outbreak. Indeed, more than 27 Chinese provinces and regions have recently reported coronavirus cases, forcing the authorities in these locations to enforce restrictions, including in some cases lockdowns. And there may be another critically important city at risk of lockdowns. On Monday, yesterday, 5 new positive COVID-19 cases were reported in Chaoyang, the large wealthy central district in the city of Beijing. State media reports that the cases are linked to imported clothing from South Korea, and more cases have been found in different districts of the city. Officially recognized cases in the sensitive city rose to 9 on Tuesday today. As always guys, if you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button. It's a huge help for a small channel like this. If you're watching for the first time and you're getting some value from the content, I release one of these every day. Maybe consider subscribing, hit that bell notification. You'll have the most up-to-date analysis on China when these are released. And for anyone who wants to go the extra mile, my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Those coffees have been a tremendous help fueling the research and writing for these every morning. But as you'll see in the next part, some content that I have to read makes me want to drink something a little bit stronger than coffee. At any rate, for everyone who's been supporting the channel in whatever way, thank you so much for your ongoing support. I really appreciate it. Okay, next up, let's continue to examine the evolving narratives on the Ukraine war and wider geopolitical issues that Beijing is communicating domestically to its own people. This gives us an idea of the information environment that people are operating in domestically. The following are fairly representative quotes from the last 48 hours or so. Unsurprisingly, anti-Americanism remains a strong theme. Quote, "For a long time, the US has been creating human rights disasters all over the world to serve its own interests under the disguise of human rights. What it has done with the Ukraine issue, continuously escalating tension and stoking hostility, is yet another case in point of its self-centered narrow-mindedness, as the crisis, in addition to containing Russia, also enables America to kill multiple birds with one stone, controlling European affairs while making hay selling weapons. Uncle Sam's dressed up persona as the human rights guardian is a total joke now." End quote. This is just one of dozens of similar articles being published across different outlets each day. State media and thought leaders' coverage on the Europeans is interesting too. If Beijing policymakers believe this narrative, they may be very much misreading the mainstream attitudes of many Europeans towards China in relation to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Quote, "As the Ukraine crisis has stretched to over a month, the mindset of Europeans has also been changing from blindly following the US to starting to reflect on the deeper cause of this conflict. And the latest US-led sanctions further expose the divided stances within the continent." And, quote, "This conflict makes Europeans understand that they are all victims by falling into the trap of the United States. For example, on the energy issue, they can't always be tied up with the US, and the Biden administration has its own calculations." End quote. And finally, here are some observations from outlet China Media Project. "The wave of official coverage and commentary is an effort to reframe the war in Ukraine so that the world sees beyond the aggressive actions of Russia and its dictator to the alleged threat posed to global security by the irresponsible and hegemonic behavior of the United States. Once we are refocused on the boogeyman of American hegemony, we become receptive to the alternative worldview that Putin and Xi Jinping reaffirmed in their February joint statement, that a transformation of the global governance architecture and world order is entirely necessary." As an aside, we remember that we covered that joint statement from February at the time. Continuing with the quote, "This is the conviction that underlies China's information campaign on Ukraine, and the reason for its information alignment with Russia." End quote. And finally, let's end on Chinese company stocks and ADRs on US exchanges. Over the weekend, we discussed Beijing regulators' move to publish revised draft rules to scrap requirements that on-site inspections should be mainly conducted by Chinese regulatory agencies, an attempt to sweeten ongoing talks with US counterparts regarding the future of Chinese American depository receipts. Even though it's still not clear whether a solution to the talks can be found, the market did react positively to the news in trading on Monday. Alibaba Group Holdings Limited and Didi Global Inc. rallied for a second day, adding $93 billion in value to US-listed Chinese stocks. The Nasdaq Golden Dragon China Index jumped 7.4% on Monday, albeit from a very low base. The index remains down 49% year-on-year. Bloomberg's Hong Kong unit writes that the advance of these ADRs, American Depository Receipts, tracked a 5.4% gain in Hong Kong's Hang Seng Tech Index, the sharpest in 2 weeks. In a research note on Sunday evening, Morgan Stanley equity strategists express, quote, "We believe this is an important step in clarifying China's stance on the audit dispute. We maintain our view that the likelihood of a final agreement being reached over the ADR audit dispute is now higher." End quote. Other analysts and investors remain cautious, pointing out that the dispute is not just regulatory in nature, but highly politicized too. We still have some ups and downs to get through for this dispute. One US-based China political analyst made one astute observation yesterday, though, expressing, "I am skeptical that this will be enough for the United States to agree to a deal to back down from the threat of delisting. Though it is instructive how much the PRC side does seem to want to find a way to maintain the ability of PRC firms to list in the United States." End quote. Hey guys, I'd love to hear what you thought about some of the updates we covered in today's episode, so throw your comments below. Always love hearing from you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.